Uh, I like to go ahead and start the call. Let's go ahead and start taking on calls right now. We have Javier in Florida. Welcome to the show with Johnny and Matt.
Hi, nice to be here. Are you having a good day?
I'm having a great day. How are you?
Yeah. Pretty good. As good as I can be, locked in quarantine. But
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, I called a couple weeks back. We had a good conversation about the nature of objective morality, and you helped clear that up. But today, I'm calling because, I guess I'll give a little bit of backstory to this question, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
All right. So I'm a Christian, Protestant. I've been my entire life since the day I was born. I've been going to church. And I'm currently in college. And a couple months ago, a preacher came to my, a street preacher, I guess you could call it, talking about stuff like young earth creationism and all that garbage that I pretty much never accepted, except for when I was like 5 years old. Like, even as a young child, I would be very interested in reading scientific books, albeit dumbed down to the level I could understand at the time.
I was wondering, Javier, if you knew the street preacher's name.
Unfortunately, no, I didn't know his name. I know he's a preacher down here in Miami at a church, but I don't know his name. Sorry.
Okay, I was just curious because there are some preachers whose entire existence seems to be traveling to college campuses like Cliff Connectley and Brother Jed and others. And some of them I've had interactions with, so I was just curious. But go ahead, continue.
All right. Anyway, so I started talking with him, trying to have a friendly conversation, telling him how he's wrong. And it went from me talking about how young earth creationism is wrong, and then suddenly I found myself arguing against theism in general, which was surprising to me because I am a theist. I believe in God, Jesus, etc. And it made me think. Why am I still a theist? If just even like inadvertently, I had so many reasons to argue against it. What is my anchor? What is anchoring me to this sort of religion when I would otherwise be free from it? And my conclusion was two things. Number one was things that I know that it's not good for convincing other people, but it convinced me, some personal experiences. And number two, fear of the unknown. So I was wondering what your guys' opinion is on freeing oneself from these two anchors, so to speak. So
can we set personal experience aside for just a second? Because I have a question about the fear of the unknown. And that is,
totally.
Why would a fear of the unknown ever be sufficient to cause you to believe something that is unknown?
How does the fear of the unknown make me believe something that is unknown? Can you clarify, please?
So there's tons of things that you don't know, right?
Yes.
Okay. And how many of them are you afraid of? And why would being afraid of something cause you to believe in
it? Maybe I misspoke. When I say fear of the unknown, I mean like fear of not knowing what comes after, I guess you could say.
Sure.
A way to put it.
Sure.
And it's not like, I don't know what animal lives in this hidden corner of Africa, so I'm afraid of it. I don't mean like that. It's just a fear of what comes after.
So sure, what comes after what? Life?
Yeah.
So if what comes after life is unknown, then what is there to fear? Your only fear is to not actually know. But if you choose to believe something, does that mean you know it?
Not with certainty, no.
It doesn't mean you know it at all. Certainty is irrelevant. You don't know it at all. If your reason for believing it is because you're simply afraid to acknowledge that you don't know, or you're simply afraid to live as if you don't know, believing something doesn't mean you know it at all.
All right, I see what you mean.
It's like if you're afraid of what tomorrow's going to bring and you decide to tell yourself that tomorrow you're going to win the lottery, because that makes it easier to do. It makes it easy to convince yourself that the thing that you don't know, you're now lying to yourself, pretending that you know something that you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Jim.
I've got an angle on this one, personally. I have a long-standing fear of death. I first realized that I was mortal when I was 6 years old on my 6th birthday. And I was crying in my room. I remember this. And my mother's like, "Why are you crying? Why don't you come out? Let's come to your party." And I was like, "I don't want to turn 6 because then I'll die." And in my head, I had figured out 6 leads to 7, leads to 70, leads to who lives past 70? Well, more and more people all the time. But eventually, you're going to kick the bucket. And that's a hard pill to swallow. As I got older, it hit me again when I was 22. And it's never really completely gone away. And at some point in my 30s, I would go to a therapist, not about that, but about generally, mental health maintenance. And I talked about my fear of death with my therapist, and he did a great job and didn't give me any answers that I wanted to hear, but it was, some people don't have the fear. And they're able to manage with their lives all the time, no real fear. Some people seek solace in some meaningful action in life. Some people turn to religion. Some people have children and live through their children. Some live through art or creative actions, social improvement. And some people just struggle and always struggle. And it's a battle that I don't know if I'll ever win. But are you clinging to a religious belief because it's so scary to get rid of it, because then it means you're gone someday? Is that it?
Not 100%, but partially, yes.
Okay.
Although I wouldn't say that I'm 100% convinced that there is absolutely nothing after. My position is, I don't know. And I don't know the possibility. It could be absolute nothingness, which I can't comprehend, or it could be something good, or it could be something terrible. And I don't like not knowing. And I especially don't like that it's possibly awful.
So I think we're all three in agreement here that none of the three of us know what happens after we die. I don't have any good reason to think that anything at all happens to me after I die. I have good reason to think that when I'm dead, it's over. Like, everything that I know about science shows that all of the things that I would identify as me, all of the available evidence points to that ends. And there's no good evidence that it continues on or that there's a mechanism for it. But even if there were, how would I then go about deciding what to believe about that? Like, let's say we just narrowed it down to religious notions, as in, hey, I don't know what happens after death, but we've got all these religions claiming things after death. Do I focus on the religion and adhere to the religion that has the best heaven or the worst hell?
Well, I mean, if we're only going, this is where there's like a conflict for me, because if I had to speak totally objectively, I wouldn't go by that standard. I go by which one has the most evidence.
Yeah, well,
even though I understand
the most
evidence, I say this is the
saying which one has the most
sorry.
evidence still doesn't get us to a point where you have sufficient evidence to conclude that that's the likely one, because as far as I can tell, we have no good evidence for any of them. Like, which afterlife has the best evidence, and how strong is that evidence? Because all I hear are claims from people. It's not like it's anything I can test or investigate. And wouldn't it be a mistake for me to say, maybe God doesn't want us, if there is a God, maybe God doesn't want us to know anything about an afterlife. So in that case, the one that has the most claims is necessarily the one that's wrong.
I see what you mean, which is why I would say that this is a point of cognitive dissonance for me, because I normally evaluate things based on evidence, but for this, I can't say that there is good evidence.
And so if you can't say there's good evidence,
can I also say that?
Why believe any of them?
Right, and you say you're trying to chase after the one that has the most evidence, but you're also fighting what I would say is a baked-in feature of the human brain, which is to survive. The fear of death seems to me to be a function of the survival instinct, and we sublimate, we build these big structures around what things that come naturally to us, and that fear of death is so strong. So we start saying, well, we're not going to die. We don't die. We continue on outside of that. Do you think you can objectively evaluate what has the best evidence when you desperately want to continue living?
I think it is possible. Not easy, but I do indeed think it's possible.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with it. I don't think we can objectively assess anything, but I think Johnny's point's great in that if we really, really, really don't want to die, if we really, really, really want to keep on living, then whether or not it's true can run the risk. You can run the risk of accepting something just because it's comforting and seems to be slightly more supported than an opposing view, and not actually be focused on whether or not it's true or whether or not you have a good enough reason to think it's true. But before we move on and get on to another caller thing, I set aside this issue of personal experience. And I wanted to let you at least address that, because if part of the reason you believe is from personal experience, then maybe it'd be a good idea to give us an example of what you mean by personal experience and how that served to kind of keep you in belief.
Okay, I guess I'll narrow it down to just one or two, because I don't want to give too much personal information out here in case one of my religious family members is somehow catches wind. But
sure.
Let's see, one or two. What would be the best ones?
You can just do one. I mean, what personal experience do you have that you think serves to ground a reason to keep believing in a God?
Actually, I think I should rephrase, because for me, the thing is, it's not that it's just one. Because if it was just one, I could think, oh, a good thing happened to me. I guess that's fine, because I know that good things can just happen, and it doesn't mean there's someone behind it, or doesn't mean there's something divine behind it. For me, it's the fact that that it's more than one experience, rather. That it's more than one. That, oh, this great thing happened. This great thing happened. This great thing that I prayed for happened. This other great thing that I prayed for happened.
Like what?
So.
Like what?
Like what? Like what?
Yeah, you don't have to give specifics or anything names, but I mean, you're basically saying, it seems that you're saying there's a whole bunch of really good things happen to you, and it just can't be coincidence. There must be some being behind it or some mind behind it. And so I'm like, give me an example of what couldn't be coincidence.
All right. Well, I guess a really big one is the fact that I've made it where I am today in academically, because I'm currently studying in college, and I'm to be totally frank, I'm just some low class nobody from a tropical island, and I've made it all the way here to the United States in a university, and I don't want to attribute all that to just myself, like I don't want to say, oh yeah, I was so great and I earned this thing, because it doesn't feel like I can attribute that all to me,
Sure. Okay. First of all, I don't understand nobody should attribute everything to themselves. Your entire life is a product of all the interactions you've had and all the things that have happened to you. But the fact that you've made it, I worry about the fact of somebody describing themselves as, I'm just a nobody from nowhere who's now studying in college. Well, I think if you did a poll of people studying in college, you would find a significant chunk of them would identify with, I'm just a nobody from nowhere in college. So since there are so many people that fit that bill, that means it's not at all extraordinary. It is in fact fairly ordinary that people from, modest means or lower than modest means some of them find themselves in a situation where they're able to get a higher education, and some of them don't. But the fact that you've been one of the fortunate ones just means you are one of millions, and you have it better than somebody else. How does that get to, even if it's not all you, what justification is there to think that there's a divine mind or some sort of cosmic intervention taking place? Why can't it just be, this is the way things worked out for you, given all the factors that affected your life?
Well, that's why I said it's not just one thing. That's why I said it's that many good things have happened to me. But in taking what you said, that I'm just one of millions and that there are others who do not get this opportunity, that's also, I guess you could say, a point of cognitive dissonance for me, because at the same time, I recognize that there are so many people that end up in very bad situations, and it's not their fault. It's just how things turned out to be. But I feel like I'm so dug into my religious belief that I'm able to hold these contradicting ideas.
It's curious.
Just think about just think about how many people there are in the world who are born into extreme forms of poverty and get a boot to the head, never have much of a chance at a comfortable, satisfying life, except through extreme pain and struggling. And then counterbalance that with you were fortunate enough to go to college, and you believe that, or on some level, you believe that a divine entity has guided your path to college and in being the United States and what have you. What kind of a deity is that condemns millions to abject poverty and suffering, but then selects a few to be comfortable?
It genuinely, this is Johnny just made the point that I was going to make, although he did it better in a different way, which is you can't have it both ways. If God is guiding the things in your life for your benefit, then he also has to be guilty of guiding all the things in other people's lives that lead to their demise. Cancer in children, people in poverty their entire lives who are never going to get a basic education, let alone a higher education. And so if you have this notion of a God that you want to credit for the good things in your life, that God has to get the blame for if things had gone differently. And for me, if that's the situation, when I look at it, it looks to me far more accurate to say we live in a universe where good things happen and bad things happen, and the universe and no God seems to give a damn about any of us, that there's a complex web of interactions that result in some people benefiting and some people suffering. And it seems wrong to both attribute that to a plan, a divine intelligence, and it also seems wrong to attribute it to our own machinations.
Right. And you have also characterized your person. Oh, sorry about that, Javier. You've also characterized your journey as one of being a paper boat on the currents of life. There were decisions that you made. There was efforts that you made. There were people who intervened on your behalf. There were times that you failed, but you're ignoring them. You're counting the hits and dismissing the misses. And if you take that, 10,000-foot view of your life, but when you get into the grit of your days, you'll see that it wasn't supernatural circumstances necessarily that caused you to be where you're at, but very natural causes that got you where you're at.
And I'd like for you to take some credit for yourself, because I'm pretty sure you did your own homework. I don't think God came and did your homework for you. I'm pretty sure you did the work to earn the grades and everything that would qualify for this.
Well, thanks for the kind words. And I don't want to take up too much time. I know there are a lot of callers in the queue, so thanks for the conversation. You've given me a lot to think about, and I hope both of you guys have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you, Javier. We look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks, Javier.
Stay safe. That's a tough thing. And it's one of the things that I think religions have kind of manipulated, not just. So as I've said before, religions not only manipulate our existent fears and provide solutions to them, religions also instill within us other fears that don't exist, and so that they can provide the cure to it. And once you have this religious mindset, all of a sudden you start seeing all these good things that are happening. That's because God cares about me. That's because my walk with God is right. And so this breaks down to where there's only a couple different models. Either if something good happened to me and something bad happened to Johnny, then it's either the case that God chose to favor me and chose to not favor Johnny, which makes God this capricious prick, I guess, handing out things to the people that he likes and punishing the ones he doesn't. Or my relationship with God is special and Johnny's isn't, which makes it Johnny's fault, which means anything bad that happens to Johnny is Johnny's own fault. He's the one to blame. And yet that would mean that anything that happens good to me should mean that I'm, my relationship with God is that. Or there isn't a God doing this sort of stuff. And instead we are pattern seeking machines that are running around saying, wow, I saw this and this and this. let me draw a conclusion that isn't justified.
Yeah, we talked about this once on Atheist Vanguard, where there was someone who believed in karma. So you can take God out of it and leave it to the forces of nature or a council of gods or what have you. By what mechanism let's say Matt, you've done good things and God rewards you. By how? Directly intervening in the timeline of human existence, by tweaking things, by violating the free will of others, by, I don't know, putting it just doesn't make sense. And the same thing with me. So how can we be said to have free will on the one hand and not on the other, right? It just doesn't make sense to me. I also don't understand the mechanism. Go on.
I guarantee you we're going to get to that in probably the next call. It's just curious to me that, let's say there's 100 people who applied for a program and one person's going to get it. And you are that one person. When you credit God with that, thank you, God, for getting me into this program. What you mean is that the divine governor and creator of the universe looked down and said, you're better than those 99. You're the one out of that 100 that I want to get that particular spot, which means it wasn't about your merit. It wasn't about the qualifications for anything else. It was God preferred you to those 99 others. And that's a really curious and potentially arrogant place to be putting yourself. It seems humble in that, oh, I'm just a little nobody and God has elevated me. But in fact, it's incredibly arrogant because you think you are the one that God has chosen to elevate. But
agreed.